Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. Sorry for being a bit late on this one. I've been phone banking and text banking for the last couple of days, first to help people get to the polls and then to help them make sure that their votes are counted. Speaking of which, if you're in an undecided battleground state, check your state's website to see if your ballot has been counted. If you used a provisional ballot, you can call 866-OUR-VOTE for help. As always, that's in the transcript and the links. Every vote must count. Today's episode will be catching up on the results so far of the election. Other UBI and normal news announcements will follow in subsequent episodes. Shout out to our Tier 3 patrons, Peter Park and Shay Meehan, as well as all our other patrons. Could not do this without you. Both the Senate majority and the presidential race remain undecided. Alaska, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Georgia, and North Carolina have not been called for either Biden or Trump as vote counts continue. Trump, as expected, issued multiple tweets alleging fraud, calling for voting to stop, and calling the election in his favor. It was unclear in many instances if he was confusing voting with counting of ballots, as the voting had already ended at the time. It's also very possible he was being intentionally vague so as to lead his followers into believing illegal voting was happening when it was just counting, or even to get them to oppose ballot counting while maintaining an excuse for himself. He has also filed lawsuits for recounts and to stop ballot counts in all the battleground states he is currently behind in, basically reading right out of the coup playbook. At least there haven't been any severe rashes of voter intimidation or overt abuse of federal law enforcement as far as I've heard, though there have been some frightening protests from Trumpers right outside of counting facilities, much like in Bush v. Gore, trying to get the counting stopped. It may get uglier before it's over, but so far it's gone better than it might have. Even if the race is decided without Trump's attempts at a coup finding traction, a great deal of civil unrest is in America's future. Unfortunately, the rejection of Trumpism that would have spelled great hope for the nation has not materialized, meaning that the GOP will likely continue down the path of authoritarianism, theocracy, and hostility towards science and democracy. Adding fuel to the fire, the Post reported that 300,000 more ballots had been scanned going into the USPS than coming out, all in swing states, causing a panic over the potentially missing ballots. USPS says that the 300,000 ballots in question are not missing, they just were not scanned outgoing due to haste. Judge Sullivan ordered all the post offices swept for ballots by officials. While it did not turn up 300,000 ballots, it did find nearly 900 undelivered ballots in Texas and a few in Pennsylvania. None of this is instilling confidence in a contentious election and is a clear result of a thrown-together process in states that are not used to mail-in voting and in the USPS, which has been hampered and arguably sabotaged in a number of ways. But there is good news. Of the Humanity Forward candidates, at least 13 have now won their elections. Congratulations to Mondaire Jones, John Hickenlooper, Grace Ming, Tim Ryan, Earl Blumenauer, Veronica Escobar, Tony Vargas, Ron Kim, Yeline New, Stanley Chang, Alex Lee, Evan Lowe, Jermaine Johnson, and my state's very own Marilyn Strickland. Cori Bush and AOC's entire progressive squad, who have been supportive of UBI, also won their races. Very sad that Jamie Harrison did not make it onto this list, both because it would have been great to have him in Congress and to get Lindsey Graham out. McConnell also beat McGrath easily, though that was a foregone conclusion as soon as Booker lost. Still, that's a lot of wins, and while these are mostly incumbents, there are definitely more challengers in there than is typical. An impressive haul, and there are still a few more races to be decided, including David Kim's. A sad scenario played out in Portland as the progressive mayoral challenger was cut short of victory by another progressive candidate acting as a spoiler. Sounds like they could have used some voting reform. Speaking of, ranked choice voting was on the ballot in 5 cities, and all of them passed it by a 2/3 majority. Albany, Bloomington, Boulder, Eureka, and Minnetonka will join 23 other cities in having the freedom to choose who they want without worry of spoilers. Alaska also still has a chance to pass it as votes are still being counted, and St. Louis passed approval voting. Big wins. Starting from grassroots will likely be the way forward for democracy reform. Let's get to work on moving these up to the state level. Other wins for democracy were Virginia passing a measure to ban gerrymandering. They will now have voting districts drawn by a bipartisan citizen-led commission that is fully transparent. Oregon also passed a measure to limit campaign contributions. And there were big wins on another front, marijuana. New Jersey, Arizona, and Montana all succeeded in legalizing weed, while South Dakota and Mississippi legalized it for medicinal use, marking success in every state that was voting on the issue. Furthermore, Oregon fulfilled Yang's policy, following the data from Europe, to become the first state in the US to decriminalize possession of small amounts of all drugs, and they legalized psychedelic shrooms. Way to go, Oregonians. But wait, there's more. California's Prop 24 data rights strengthening bill passed with flying colors. Residents will now have real enforcement of most of the data rights Yang's platform calls for, which will become increasingly important over time as AI and social media become increasingly dominant over our lives. That is, if Yang doesn't get appointed as Secretary of Technology and find some solutions to it. Finally, the big surprise Humanity Forward has been promising, which you may have forgotten about by now, has finally popped. Yang and the nonprofit will be turning their attention to a concerted nationwide advocacy campaign to make the case for cash relief, including a major media blitz and bringing public pressure to bear on Congress. They will be essentially lobbying Congress to pass recurring monthly stimulus as a necessary bipartisan policy. They are shooting to exploit a window of opportunity when a new Congress is sworn in for getting something big done before partisan gridlock sets in. If the GOP retains control of the Senate, which unfortunately appears likely, this will be an enormously uphill battle as the Senate will be in full obstructionist mode, just as in the Obama era. That said, Yang and the Humanity First movement popularized UBI in an unbelievably short time span. If we've already done the impossible once, what's one more? Stimulus not passing before the election, while terrible, might actually benefit this effort. And I don't have to remind you, if people get a taste of recurring unconditional income, the battle for UBI is all but won. Head to movehumanityforward.com to volunteer, donate, or learn more. The next great war has begun. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Make sure your vote has been counted, congratulate our winning candidates, and thank all the rest for their efforts. Celebrate the wins for democracy, data rights, and practical drug policy. Prepare for the next offensive with Yang and Humanity Forward on cash relief. Help recruit other organizations to the cause and get everyone to sign the UBI petition. Flood Congress and Trump with calls, tweets, and letters using the ResistBot or Income Movement easy contacts below. If you need help, consult Humanity Forward, the Income Movement Aid Database, the Mission Asset Fund, United Way, or the H3 podcast thread. And don't forget to Yang Daily.